We're gonna look to go ahead and end the topic here. I'm gonna say that right now because Giants fans, we as a whole have a tendency to harp on things. You still hear people talking about Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. I mean, things that have been gone and done with here. So we're gonna put a nail in the coffin here on Shedeur Sanders in that topic here because some news did come out recently. Obviously we talked about on draft night where the Giants supposedly had this meeting with Shedeur Sanders, gave him some stuff to learn. He didn't learn it quick, frankly, and Dable supposedly went off about it there, at least voiced his displeasure in some way, shape, or form, and Sanders went back at him. Which listen, anybody knows Dable's personality knows that's the kiss of death right there. But there's been some more news coming out now. Now, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said this. He said, while the Giants worked out Shedeur Sanders the week before the draft, Sanders sensed much earlier that New York probably wasn't in the cards for him. Sanders openly acknowledged during the pre-draft process that he didn't hit it off with Giants coaches, per source. Which is funny because everybody talked about all along about how, the handshake at the East-West Shrine Bowl was like so overplayed it's not even funny, obviously. A lot of things were talked about as if they were like this was a foregone conclusion. Now, listen, we fell for it. We said in our mock we thought the Giants would take Shedeur Sanders. We thought he'd be there. We thought he'd take him. That's what all the news was at that point. We did our last final mock, and a lot of the mocks we did. So, it's interesting sometimes what is reality and what is fiction and what comes out and what doesn't come out there, So we also have Todd McShay, of course, who said right beforehand, a few days before the draft, that Brian Dable was not a Shedeur Sanders guy. So that's kind of what opened people's eyes to this potential here just a few days before the draft. Now, Paul Schwartz of the New York Post said, what seems true is that there was not one incident or a moment where the Giants soured on. There's no one incident or moment where the Giants soured on Sanders. That much reported terrible Sanders meeting with head coach Brian Dable, the one where Sanders was unprepared for an install test, Dable gave him and then balked at Dable's criticism. That is likely either untrue or overhyped. There was no bomb meeting. There were less than ideal interactions. There were touch points all along the line that provided checkpoints for the Giants to assign to the pro and con columns. The conclusion was that the con column was too overflowing to accept. I thought that was kind of interesting, again, from a guy who specifically covers the Giants there. So all this stuff about this meeting with Sanders, you're hearing mixed results. Who knows if that actually happened? Here's all we really need to know in the end. The Giants met with Shedeur plenty of times in this draft process. They decided they didn't want him. In the end, it's all that matters, guys. Like I said, I want this to kind of be the final, again, unless any kind of crazy news breaks out of this scenario. I want this to be kind of that nail in that coffin because, like I said, we have that habit as Giant fans of harping on things. I guarantee you in 2 years, people will still be talking about Saquon leaving for the Eagles and Daniel Jones and all this kind of stuff there. Same as we still harp about, Geno Smith, starting in place of Eli Manning, which was BS, let's be honest, but it was years ago. Let's move on. Or, Giants could have drafted Patrick Mahomes if they just listened to, it's like, stop. We got to move on from things eventually. And that's what I want this to be with Shedeur Sanders. Listen, I hope the best for the kid. I think his father put him in a bad scenario, didn't teach him the tools he needed in the draft process, really screwed him up. And unfortunately, he's an adult now. He's got to figure that out and figure out how to fix that. So, hope the best for the kid because, listen, he's got a lot of issues. It's quite obvious. But if you listen to anybody that knows him, they actually say he's a good kid. So I don't want to root against him. I just want to, like I said, point out what we're hearing about what did happen with him and the Giants. And say, with that, it's time to move on. It's time to get on the Jackson Dart train and hopefully have a great future with him there.
If you like that clip, then you will love the full episodes too. Find us on your favorite podcast app and look for us on all your favorite social media platforms.
Thanks so much.
Please, I'm begging you. Please subscribe.